Sony is going through a very tough time right now. They just canceled a bunch of live service games. The co-CEO Herman Hulst was just outed, and we're also finding out that their California offices are firing a ton of employees. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, obviously, I do not like to revel in the fact that people are losing their jobs, but when you are not good at your job, or there's really no point to have you around at a company, ultimately you shouldn't have that job. And that is what we are seeing a lot of in the industry right now. They hired a lot of people as the industry was growing, but now they've realized they do not need all of these roles and all of these ridiculous positions. And we're hearing that tons of people are being laid off. PlayStation is going through a major restructure right now because, yes, just a few days ago, we heard that Herman Hulst was no longer the PlayStation co-CEO. To wrap this situation up, a dramatic shakeup for the Sony hierarchy has seen PlayStation ditch its dual CEO approach less than a year after it was introduced. So clearly, these two were not meshing together, and they decided this was not a good approach because, yeah, it wasn't even that long ago that they announced that this was going to happen, and it seemed that they were very hopeful for it, but it didn't turn out well. And the ex-Guerrilla Games managing director Herman Hulst was appointed co-CEO alongside the platform business group bigwig Hideki Nishino, following the departure of Jim Ryan, another person that helped dig Sony into the ditch that they're in now. He wasn't like the worst out of every single CEO or higher up at all of these gaming companies. I still think that Bobby Kotick was worse, but he still wasn't good. And it seemed that this was just a very quick turnaround, that these two didn't work together, and Sony decided, no, we actually just want the one CEO, and now we're hearing about all of these layoffs. So this is a 80 level article. It says the industry-wide layoffs show no signs of stopping as Sony Interactive Entertainment quietly fires an undisclosed number of PlayStation employees, according to a former senior designer technologist, Oscar Diaz, one of the affected workers. So we don't know how many people exactly are being laid off, but one would assume it's quite a few. Most of my team was just laid off from PlayStation. It was a dream to get to work with Sony on the platform I'd grown up playing since the PlayStation 1 and contribute to the PS5, Portal, PSVR 2, PS App, and future consoles. If you know anyone who needs an engineer experienced native console UI, feel free to reach out. And this was actually first spotted on Reddit, and his posts across his social media pages reveal that he and the majority of his teams were laid off. And again, we do not know specific games that they worked on or specific projects, but it sounds like he had been there for quite a while and had worked on several major things. And of course, a year ago in February 2024, Sony also let go some more of its employees, but at least back then they officially acknowledged it, announcing the termination of 900 workers, nearly 8% of their global workforce, and closing PlayStation London entirely. And with this one, they have not, at least yet, issued any sort of public statement, though I don't think that they are going to, because they are already in a line of fire with gamers, right? Just a few days ago, they announced that they, of course, were losing the CEO. They also talked about how they were canceling multiple live service projects. Like, apparently we were supposed to be getting a God of War live service game, which sounds terrible. In my opinion, these companies need to realize that live service slop is not the future of this industry. Sure, live service can work if you put a lot of time and effort into it and you actually care about the experience you're giving gamers. They just think that slapping live service monetization models on everything is going to turn out well and hunky-dory for them, and that isn't the case. And they just had the biggest failure in the history of the video game industry happen just a few months ago because they bought Firewalk Studios, and then Concord came out, lasted 2 weeks, and failed. They shut down Firewalk, laid off hundreds of developers, and it was just a terrible situation for them all around. As this article says, though, despite that and having Concord of all games in their portfolio, some ex-Firewalk members appear to be doing just fine, with it recently coming to light that Pamela Piscatello, the director of marketing and operations behind the infamous hero shooter, has landed a job as a senior product marketing manager on the Halo franchise. I did cover that in another video. Terrible news for Halo fans. I understand that Halo Studios is not in the best of positions anyway right now. They're a group that loves to virtue signal and they love to hire activists. And while she did not affect the gameplay directly with a title like Concord, I still think that it shows that they are not listening to us and they are not kind of getting the bigger picture. The gamers are sick and tired of agenda driven slop being shoved in our faces. And if you have a game where you are marketing all of this DEI slop, okay, it's not going to lead to a positive scenario for your company. Your game is just going to be a complete failure. We also know that Will Waltz, a developer who spent over 12 years at 343 Industries senior R&D principal animator, who back in October denounced Halo Studios executives, primarily the studio head Pierre Hinates, described them as cancer and creatively limiting individuals, and it sure seems like a rough time to be a Halo fan, and it certainly is. And all of this is very bad news for most gamers, but for me, I can't say I feel all that bad because when PlayStation or Sony moved their headquarters to California, we saw them take a turn for the worse. They have focused so heavily on live service slop. They have censored tons of developers that are just trying to make their way within this industry and want to allow their fans to buy their titles on any platforms. We see developers being forced away from PlayStation, and Jim Ryan was a very big cancer to Sony. And I was really hoping that maybe they could turn things around with Herman Hulst and this other CEO, but I just have such little hope and faith in them at this point because keep in mind, someone like Herman Hulst was the reason why Concord really existed in the first place because Firewalk Studios apparently was running out of money, and that's why they took the exclusive publishing deal with Sony. They were continuing development, and then they decided, okay, we no longer can continue forward. We're going to have to be bought by someone. And because Herman Hulst had so much faith in this project, he decided to go ahead and buy them and then dump hundreds of millions of dollars into this game. And then he ended up wasting $500 million on one single title just for it to become the biggest failure in the history of this industry. And it sucks to see because I want Sony to be great. I want companies to thrive. And I love video games, right? So I want them all to come out and be 10 out of 10s. I would love if I didn't have to sit here and question what Sony was doing or talk about games failing. I just want people to enjoy games. But if I don't call them out and their shitty actions out, then they're not going to get any better. And so we look at situations like this and you might say to yourself, oh, this could be good, but ultimately they do not have a track record of good anymore. It's a company that you really need to look out for, you really need to scrutinize, and this just does not look good for them because they just canceled multiple live service games. Again, companies right now are really banking heavily on live service. And while it can work, I don't think that it can work when you are not actually listening to what gamers want and you're not following market trends. You're just going, oh, everybody's making a live service, so let's greenlight a lot of them. That's going to be a fail. Now they're losing co-CEOs and they're also doing all of these layoffs. And maybe these people were the few individuals at this company who were just talented and passionate. But I'm not going to sit here and really give anybody in this situation the benefit of the doubt. As soon as they moved their headquarters to California in 2016, we knew that it was all really going downhill for them, and their company's become a dumpster fire since then. And of course, I will be keeping my eye on this to see if anybody else makes any statements. I think Sony's going to be pretty silent on it just because they are going through so much controversy already. Only time will tell, but for now, that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.